Let's see, that's right at 1 inch. Hello, thanks for joining me. Well, today I'm going to put a new chuck on my Logan lathe, and I'm going to modify the chuck a little bit. I don't really like the amount of overhang it has. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, here's a chuck I put on my South Bend lathe a while back, and it's basically the same chuck. The depth of this chuck is about 3 7/8 with the backing plate, and then I got like a little donut on the back of that. That's another almost ½ inch, I'd say. So I've got a lot of overhang there. I've got close to 4½ inches, 4 3/8 inches overhang. Okay, if you look at the chuck on my Logan, chuck jaws only stick out about 3/4 inch, and the total overhang is about 2½ inches. That's not much overhang, and it makes that chuck extremely rigid. If I'm working up close to the chuck doing cutoff or whatever, there's no chatter. So I'll show you what I'm going to do to this other chuck. I've removed the jaws and I've taken the screws out of this dust cover. That's just to keep chips out of this area. But if I left that in place, then I'd only have about 1/8 of an inch for my backing plate to go down inside the chuck. And that means I'd have to put a donut on the back of my backing plate, and the overall overhang would be significant. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to make the backing plate seat up against this. But I'm also going to cut that down right there. And I've got the distance from here to here is 3/8 of an inch. This is 3/8 of an inch deeper here. But I'd like to see it at least, well, as much as I can get, really. Let me zoom in on that. What I got to watch out for is these pivot points for the pinion gears. But I believe I can take probably almost 1/4 inch off of that without hurting anything. But before I do that, I'm going to take this all apart, take all these pieces out. This chuck's actually fairly well made and very reasonably priced. Okay, this is kind of pushing the limits of this 5-inch chuck. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. Hope not. I'd hate to have that thing fly out of there. But I got about, 1.5 turns on my key before one of those flies out. So probably going to have to take that kind of slow due to that overhang, but cast iron turns pretty easy. Okay, right there you can see what I did. Looks like about 1/8 of an inch of meat left. Looking at that right there. I believe that'll be plenty strong. If it breaks, well, I guess I'll buy a new chuck. But I think it'll be alright. Okay, the thread depth on my Logan is 1 inch. So my plate has got to be 1 inch thick at the spindle. So this is 5/8 of an inch. So that means the back of my plate is going to be 3/8 of an inch with no donut, no extension on the back. So I'll have to essentially put a donut inside that mates with that. I think it's going to work out really well. Okay, I'm starting out with a chunk of steel that's probably about maybe an 1/8 inch over the chuck diameter. But it has some cuts in it. Beggars can't be choosy. Somebody gave it to me. So I'm going to slab off about 1 inch of that, a little bit more, and weld those up, and then turn it on the lathe. My weld is showing up there. Not too worried about it. More of an eyesore than it is a problem. It's really not going to weaken the back plate much. That's as far as I'm going to go in the center. Now I'm going to have to start taking it down to the diameter of that hub inside the chuck. I'll go measure that. I want to avoid, and I can make that inside hub about that big. If I go any bigger, it'll run into that. So go with 2 1/4. So basically what I'm doing is, that's going to be the donut on the back of the chuck, except it's going to be inside instead of outside. Okay, I'm going to drill a hole in here that's 1.378. That's the appropriate size to thread for 1.5 by 8 threads, which is what my Logan has. After thinking about this a minute, I need to be drilling from the other side, drilling and threading. This is a side that will go against my headstock, and I've got to have an unthreaded area cut in there to seat up against the back register. Okay, I've got to cut a shoulder here. There's an unthreaded area on the spindle, and it needs to be 1.5 inches exactly and 1/4 inch deep. So I've got a tool sitting right on the face of this. So I got a carriage stop over here and a piece of 1/4 inch stock that I'm using to set the depth with. hole gauge because it needs to be pretty close. 1.499. Darn close. Like I said, I'll smooth it up with some hammer cloth and that'll get it. Yeah, that's smooth enough. Now let's cut some threads. Okay, I'm getting ready to thread here. I haven't got my compound set right or anything yet, but I want to set the height of this tool. In order to do that, I want to set it against this straight edge here and eyeball that to see if it's straight up and down. Looks like it's pretty darn close actually. You can see what I'm looking at here, leaning toward me a little bit. I'm going to call that dead on. Okay, some of you may remember I made a video on changing this. There was a nut sticking up there that would not allow my compound to swing around the back side. So, and the reason I did that is so that I could do internal threads with my compound facing the back side like that. Okay, last time I cut threads on the inside was probably the last time I made a backing plate. I made it for this chuck right here. And I made it like this, and I actually made them at the wrong angle because I had that nut right there. And I was using this indicator on the side, which was misleading. It would be 60 degrees on this side instead of, or 59.5 instead of 29.5 to get the right angle. But anyway, several said, why don't you just turn it like that? Well, that'll work. And maybe that's the best way to do it. But what you wind up with is your tool post sitting here and your compound hitting your work. So it's doable. Let's see how tight it is. Come back here. Basically, I'm right at the back of the threads right there, and my compound is almost hitting the work right there. I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm going to thread it like I always do by turning the compound completely around. Thing is, I don't have that mark there to go by, so I got to go 59.5 on the side right here. Okay, it's not 59.5, it's 60.5. Very confusing by the side scale there. Okay, here's what I got. Everything's set up, except I need to adjust the length of my, use my head there. Got to allow myself enough clearance, but need to minimize overhang here. Okay, now moving my compound out until the tool contacts inside the hole there. Okay, right there is contact is made. Now I'm going to reset my dial to 0 right here. And that's what I'll go back to every time. Okay, I could probably go a little faster than that. I think I will. It cuts better threads, a little smoother when you're going faster. But you've got to maintain control too. You've got to make several passes. Got my cross slide set at 0, and I'm going to advance with the compound. I'm going to go in about 3/1000 there and make my first pass. Here we go. Move it in that way, pull back out, come back to 0. Go about 5/1000 more on my compound, wait for my mark to come around. Five thousandths more. Yeah, it's a little scary right there. I'm close to what I'm turning here. And I've got to be sure and throw this half nut out fast enough. Okay, I'm getting deeper where I'm cutting more steel as I go. I'm going to have to reduce how much I feed each time we go in. Right now I'm at about 5/1000. And I'm going to drop that to about 3 or 4. That's seated all the way right there. But they're a little bit tight, and I don't know if it's the shoulder or the thread depth. I think it's the thread depth. I'm going to leave it like that. Real good. Excellent. And it is seated, as near as I can tell. Yes, very well seated. And thankfully, that threaded portion is not hanging through. It's real close, but it's not hanging through. And I'm glad about that because, if you remember right, this has to seat against that thing inside the chuck. Okay, I want to take that down till the gap in there is about 1/8 inch. See it inside there? It's about 1/4 inch now. And then I'll take the rest of it off of this shoulder here to fit inside my chuck. I'm going 1/1000th at a time. Which it really should be about 1/2 thousandth. I'm getting tired of messing with it. Oh, that's it. That's really close. I grabbed it. That is where I need to be. Just where I need to go. I need to go about a little over 1/16 of an inch. I'm really close right there. Okay, I'm getting ready to drill the 3 holes in the faceplate. I got this indexing head that I made from a gear. Made a video on it. If you haven't seen it, be sure and watch it. Expands inside the arbor, or inside the spindle. Put some studs on my bearing here so I can take these off, take these nuts off, and then I have, without disturbing my bearing. Okay. I've got my chuck mounted in my chuck again, and I'm going to set up the hole location with my tool post drill. I've got a countersink in there. And I'm just going to locate the distance from center on one hole. Just using the countersink to judge where that hole is. My only concern is this way. This way it doesn't matter. I think that's it. Now I'll put a spotting drill in place of the countersink. Okay, my red dots, there's 6 of them, so I got to skip. I only got 3 holes, so line it up with a red dot. Lock my pin in place. There we go. I can't clamp that in my vise, so I'm going to use my little sub table to drill these holes. Okay, last time I used this counter bore, I broke the end of it off. See if I can't avoid that again. Lots of lubricant maybe. Seemed to work okay. I just didn't want to take a chance on breaking that thing off again. Okay, I left those bolts sticking out very slightly because I didn't want to take any more off of that. I've just got about maybe a little over an 1/8 inch on the bottom of that bolt. Can't imagine it hitting anything, but I need to make sure those bolts are clearing. Pretty close. Darn close. In fact, it's hitting. Doggone. I'm going to stick those in the lathe and knock the head of them off. I may end up putting a seal on that. There's about a 1/64 of an inch clearance there. I don't know. I'd say chips will probably get in there eventually. They seem to find their way into everything. There you go. Put these Nordic lock or something like that, Norlock lock screws or lock washers in there. I got them. I might as well use them. Good fitting thread. Probably can't see that. About a 1/2 thousandths. It's not too bad. Of course, I'm right up against the chuck there. And that's not drill rod or anything, that's just cold roll. And I'm happy with that. Okay. This chuck has about a full inch more overhang from the spindle bearing. I suspect it'll probably chatter a little bit, but hopefully it'll do cut off all right. The Logan chuck, the original chuck, did great. See if my efforts to reduce the overhang paid off. I hear just a tiny bit of chatter. Not bad though. Not too bad at all. I like it. Well, I eliminated the donut on the back of that and still got good thread engagement with the backing plate. The spindle goes in 1 full inch. I didn't make it like that chuck. It's just, that's the original chuck and there's no way, there's nothing on the market like it. But this works good on this lathe because it's so shallow. But I'm pretty happy with this. My old chuck is getting kind of worn and I was getting worried, but I think this is going to be a really usable chuck. I successfully reduced the overhang by about 5/8 of an inch. Probably worthwhile effort. Anyway, that about wraps it up for today, and thanks for joining me. Be sure and subscribe.